Hello and welcome to another episode of the Simon and Friends podcast. I'm Simon Short. Joining me this week is Ben Parker. Ben, welcome in, man. Happy Super Bowl week. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank y'all very much. Always a pleasure to be in. There's so much to talk about. Kind of an annual show at this point for you and I. I am really looking forward to it. We're going to cover a lot of ground tonight. A little bit wider net than usual, but I'm very much looking forward to it. Yes.
Absolutely. So Ben is here for our fourth annual Nerdy Super Bowl preview. I'll get into exactly what that means here in just a minute. Just a quick programming note. Ben and I are recording this on Friday the 30th. Didn't have a podcast episode come out during that week, during last week. This episode is coming out on Tuesday, getting you ready for the Super Bowl. There will be another episode this week out on Thursday, the normal schedule, and then we'll be back on the normal Thursday schedule after that. So giving you a bonus episode here, week of the Super Bowl. But I figure, listen, we're in a world where Shadur Sanders and Joe Flacco are Pro Bowl quarterbacks. Who actually needs a podcast episode from me the week of the Pro Bowl? I think everybody's essentially just kind of mailing it in for the Pro Bowl week. So, except for Ben, of course. But that is what is happening. So this episode's coming out Tuesday. Thank you all for listening. If you're on YouTube, thank you for being here. If you are listening on audio, A1 Day 1, we appreciate you as always. So let's get into this. The fourth annual Nerdy Super Bowl preview. For 2 weeks between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl, you have heard or will hear or are hearing some excellent human stories, some great X's and O's breakdowns, and a few really good narrative outlines heading into the big game, the Super Bowl. But Ben and I usually have some additional nerdy conversations we want to have, and it's not always stuff outside of big media's purview, but things we just really want to dig in more on. Year one, 3 years ago, we had a team with a rookie contract quarterback make the Super Bowl versus a team with a big money quarterback in Eagles versus Chiefs when Hurts was still on his rookie deal and Mahomes had just gotten that humongous contract. Well, we thought it was humongous at the time. Year two, 2 years ago, we broke down positional breakdowns of Chiefs and the 49ers, where those two teams were spending their money. And then last year, as we started to get deeper into the draft work, we looked at the draft trends between the Eagles and Chiefs, not only who they were drafting and when, positional value, but also body types and what sort of things they counted on when they went into the draft, how they built their teams. This year, there have been two topics I think front of mind for me and Ben over the course of the full season, and it's coaching and first round QB failures and the relationship between those two things. This Super Bowl sums up those topics beautifully because we have two quarterbacks in this game. Both were third overall picks in their respective classes. Both are big with strong arms and athletic. One is in his second year this year, and he looks like he's set up for success for the next at least half decade or so. And the other is a journeyman. He's on his fifth team in 6 years, but he's now a two-time Pro Bowler for the last two seasons in a row, and he looks to have found a home in Seattle. Behind those quarterbacks are head coaches early in their tenures with respective teams. Both are replacing longtime head coaches with Super Bowl wins under their belts. Coaches I'm sure will be first ballot Hall of Famers when their time comes for that, prestigious honor. Um, I'm sure that'll go great. Ben and I love the draft. We love the coaching carousel. As you guys know, we've been doing the coaching carousel stuff. If you all follow me on Twitter, you've been seeing all of my reactions to it. If you only had a look into the Slack of me and Ben, you will see all the updated thoughts that I have throughout the carousel, even more than on Twitter. I pray for Ben in that moment. And with the draft 2 months away, it's the end of a crazy coaching carousel and also turning into getting ready for the draft. And we have these long tenured head coaches that are leaving and new guys that are coming in. And there's a lot to explore here moving forward. And this Super Bowl, I think, perfectly encapsulates it. Um, Ben, when we're getting ready for the Super Bowl, and you and I were kind of discussing what our nerdy Super Bowl preview would be about, did what were some of your first thoughts? Did you think we would kind of land on this like Island of Misfit Toys quarterback situation? Did you think we would land on this coaching situation between McDonald and Vrabel? When you think of this year's Seahawks versus this year's Patriots, what was kind of narratively the first thing that came to your mind?
Well, before we really got too deep into my thoughts, I just figured, hey, it'll be another analysis basically of the rosters and how they drafted them and what body types they were looking for and that sort of thing. And that's obviously not what we're doing tonight. Fairly quickly though, once I started thinking about it, there is a lot of overlap here, but there's a lot of differences too. It felt like for the Patriots, I still think this is a roster that has got holes in it. I still do, and which to me makes Vrabel's coaching job all the more impressive, and Drake May's play during the season all the more impressive, not necessarily the postseason. So those two things drove me on the Patriots side. And then on the Seahawks side, they've really only got one more year's worth of good drafting than the Patriots do, but it's a heck of a year. You know, we'll break that down further in a minute. But I felt like the Seahawks had more built up, more of a foundation built up here, and that they really had something better to work with, but they didn't have the coach of the quarterback. And then they dropped those two pieces in, and that kind of finished it off. So some similarities, some things very different, though, I felt like.
Yeah, when I first sat down to think about this, I went to that exact thing. At first I went to the draft. The issue with the draft was, especially from the Patriots side, Elliot Wolf has been the GM in name for a couple years, but obviously Belichick's only been gone for 2 years at this point. So they haven't really developed any draft trends in terms of like what they like. And for the Seahawks, they've been so evenly spread in what they've been drafting. I had this broken down somewhere in here. Hope everybody enjoyed that. They have drafted since 2022. So you mentioned it. The 2022 classes in year four of their rookie deals. So that's as far back as I was comfortable really looking. They've drafted two backs, a receiver, a tight end, four offensive linemen, three defensive linemen, and four DBs. So like pretty evenly spread out. So again, you're not going to get a lot of trends from that the same way when we did Chiefs Eagles last year. We're like, these two teams have been in the Super Bowl twice in 3 years. They've been drafting really well. They really rely on those rookie contract guys. Um, and they're teams that make a lot of draft picks. So we had like a really good depth of players to sort from. So I was like, okay, we're not going to look at that. I went to look at the positional breakdown of the cap, and both teams are very similar. Both teams are very trench focused. You think about for the Seahawks, like bringing over Leonard Williams, bringing over DeMarcus Lawrence. They gave Charles Cross that extension during the season, so that bumped their O line numbers. The Patriots went into free agency for the trenches, and the only difference was Seattle had a quarterback kind of in that mid tier range, which New England didn't have, but New England's paying their DBs a little more. So like there wasn't a lot there either. But the thing I kept coming back to when I was looking at, positional breakdowns or overall cap usage was both teams were fairly low in their cap hits and active cap spending, and dead money especially was pretty low for these teams. And what kind of kept coming up was the amount of cap and amount of roster positions that were devoted to guys on their rookie contracts still. So over the cap has this great resource that they do for all these different contextualization things that you can see for how teams are spending their money. And the Patriots and the Seahawks are two of the teams that most rely on rookie contract players in the NFL. So what do I mean by that exactly? They break these down into four categories. Percentage of teams cap devoted to rookie contract players, total dollars spent on players on rookie contracts, percent of teams roster, so the amount of number of bodies um, devoted to guys on rookie contracts, and then number of players on their rookie contracts on the roster. The Seahawks are first or second in three of those four categories, and they're fourth in number of total players on their roster that are on their rookie deals in the NFL. So top five in every category you can be in. And the Patriots are in between third and sixth in all of those categories. So no higher than third, no lower than sixth in any of those categories. I was like, wow, okay, that seems like a outlier, right? You wouldn't expect two of the teams that rely most on rookie contract players to be in the Super Bowl, right? So I contextualize it. Who are the other teams kind of around them in these categories? Here are the other ones: Jets, Browns, Titans, Saints, Cardinals. All of those teams are drafting in the top 10 of this year's draft, and most of them are have hired new head coaches for this season. Cardinals don't actually have a head coach right now, so that's awkward. But six, I just mentioned six other teams that are right there with the Seahawks and Patriots. The only other good team was the Packers, right? And the Packers were a little lower on most of those numbers, but we know the Packers are really young. Ton of young, wide receivers and defensive linemen, especially for Green Bay. They always have a lot of draft picks. But I just thought it was crazy that uh, I went to look at this and not only how reliant on the rookie contract guys they were, but specifically, usually if you do this, you're bad. So what do you think it is about these draft classes, Ben? We have these pulled up, but Patriots going back to 2023, Seahawks back to 2022. What do you think it is about their drafts over the last 3 or 4 years? Do you think has set them up to be in this point where they can have fairly cheap rosters? They can make big money free agent spending when they needed to this offseason, but they're back here in the Super Bowl with all these young players.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I love the data there. That's fantastic. For me, it's two very different ways that they got here to this usage of these rookie contracts. In New England, it's been a way of life ever since Belichick got there in the early 2000s. It's not a well kept secret that the first thing he did when he got there was get rid of two or three defensive expensive guys. I mean, it was the
Hmm.
first thing he did literally when he got there. And they have had a reputation of tight spending over the years. You can call it stingy, but it's a very clean, efficient operation from a cap standpoint. They have been the poster child, really, for not using dead money any more than they had to. You get rid of a player and you get somebody to replace him. That has been their way, and they've just reshaped the roster. They didn't bring in players one for one. They just continued to reshape the roster. And when you got Brady and Belichick, it allowed for that. So that's how they got here. I don't actually think their drafting has been great over the past 4 years. It's kind of like they have two good classes and two not good classes, essentially. But it's been a way of life for them. So that really is what's happening there in New England. In Seattle, it's kind of a cycle. Obviously, all those great players that they had during the Pete Carroll heyday all just got old and retired. And
Hmm.
so then it was back to Schneider and Carroll to some extent, but Schneider and Carroll to draft all these new guys. And over the past 4 seasons, they've done a heck of a job doing it. And even though they decided to let Carroll go, it felt like he was still developing these players, whereas maybe Belichick during the last season or two that he was there was starting to struggle to develop these guys, and maybe even farther back than that, really. So you really have 4 years here on Seattle's part of good drafting, but they're being developed too, and that's a huge key. And I really, that goes back to what I said at the open about Seattle really having a great foundation here. Now, ultimately, both teams are here in the Super Bowl. They've both got plenty of young players, and they've both used these rookie contracts to really keep their cap numbers, a lot more flexible, balanced, and friendly. But they got here really about two different ways, from that philosophy standpoint, to be honest.
Yeah, what stood out to me, and I love the point about development because you look at some of these guys, like for the Seahawks, Charles Cross wasn't considered a slam dunk coming out. He was viewed as a guy that had a bunch of talent, but had some
Right.
obvious flaws and needed work. Kind of reminds me,
Yeah.
and this isn't necessarily based on tape study, but reminds me a little bit about like Caleb Lomu this year, where it's like a tackle that has all these like technical skills and like is pretty good in pass protection, but like is he a little too light? Is he a little too one dimensional? You talk about like Reek Woolen, right? My gosh, like talk about a perfect Pete Carroll story. Like 6'4", 200 pounds, 4.2 speed, was playing wide receiver a couple years ago, and now let's make him a corner. And he's had some ups and downs in his career, but like he's going to get paid this offseason probably. Um, JSN going from a guy that's like a slot only considered player to an outside player and one of the best wide receivers in the league. Um, on and on and on. And then you talk about the Patriots, and you have the 2022 class that we don't include because that was the Cole Strange and Tyquan Thornton class. And Marcus Jones. Shout out
Yep.
Marcus Jones. Great return man. Still solid nickel corner. Love him. Um, but even within those classes, they have some not only hit and miss like across like one class to the next. Like great first round pick, bad second round pick, bad third round pick, good fourth round pick. And you have the fluctuation that's a little bit more typical there. But Seattle, it feels like, even these mid-round picks, Abraham Lucas, Reek Woolen, um, Boye Mafe, Zach Charbonnet, Anthony Bradford, like these are AJ Barner, they're getting good guys in the mid rounds as well. So for New England, these numbers are also definitely buoyed by having a quarterback on a rookie contract, right? Because so much of your cap can be devoted to quarterback if you have a veteran on the roster, that it really helps, those numbers of kind of the percent of cap and dollar amount spent and those things that I'm talking about. But they've really hit their premium positions as well. Their left tackle, their number one wide receiver, or number two wide receiver now, their corner one are all rookie contract guys: Booty, Gonzalez, Will Campbell, as well as other key spots. Another guard in Jared Wilson, a starting safety in who was their draft pick this year? What was his name? Craig Woodson, um, and then Marcus Jones, who I talked about. But the quarterback in particular keeps this number really low, considering all the free agents they spent their money on last spring. It gives you that room to go get Carlton Davis and Milton Williams and Robert Spillane. For Seattle, it's a little bit of the inverse. They have the mid QB contract guy, um, but then even more of their premium positions are on contract or rookie contract players. Wide receiver one, both tackles, both guards, all three nominally starting corners, and then several of these rotational edge players. When the it's a little bit like the way the Eagles want to be built. They just have more veterans on the defensive line. But when you want to have a stable of like five or six defensive linemen, that can get expensive pretty quickly, right? But if four or five of those defensive linemen are on their rookie contract, it looks great. So that's why like guys like Derek Hall and Boye Mafe and there was one other guy I was thinking about here. Oh, well, obviously Byron Murphy being on the defensive line. When those guys are rotating in with veterans like Lawrence and Williams, um, it makes that defensive line, even if it's so talented, it's not that expensive if you have all these guys kind of on these rookie contracts. So it was just cool to see how both teams definitely prioritized um, high value positions. Like I said, both left tackles were on rookie deals up until Cross's extension during the year. Both, CB ones, both wide receiver ones. But then they were able to kind of turn around and fill in the gaps after that, right? Spend where they needed to, give extensions when they needed to. And these guys are ready to play now. These are starters. This isn't just like a bunch of nice role players. Like even the Chiefs in their 3 year Super Bowl run had a lot of good rookie contract players, but not all of them were like on the field starters for like 70% of the snaps, right? We've talked about them in the past, and Payne and I talked about this when we did a Chiefs award towards the end of the season, but their great 2022 class, so many are up for free agency this year, and they're probably going to get paid, but not a lot of them became every down starters for the Chiefs, or like we have to pay these guys. But now we have to replace guys that play 45 to 65% of the snaps. Whereas for the Seahawks and the Patriots, these guys are like, hey, locked in starter, you have a role, and either we're developing you to get you there, or we just hit this pick out of the park and you're ready to be a starter right now.
Yeah, it's a great point on all that. You got me wanting to go two different directions here, which again, sign of a great podcaster. Let's start with the premium position thing. It makes a huge difference when those picks hit. Okay, for both of these teams, not every position necessarily, but for both of these teams, they drafted guys that made sense, but then they panned out. They developed them and they hit. When you have some of these franchises, and it happens to everybody from time to time, you draft what you think is your left tackle of the next decade, and he doesn't pan out. So then 2 years later, you're like, well, dang it, do I draft another one because it's premium position, or do I go with this guard here who I absolutely love? I know this guy is going to be fantastic, right? So you start to get those vicious cycles. It helps a lot, man, when you're the Seahawks. And this year, your first two picks in the draft could be offensive guard in Zabel and safety in Eamon Wari, because you
Yeah.
did hit on your tackles and you did hit on some of your defensive spots, right? So that helps a lot. It helps a lot when you're the Patriots and you hit on Drake May. Man, you talk about the freedom to go any direction at that point, but then they're able to turn around and draft Campbell at the tackle spot. So the premium position picks are it when they hit, it does allow you to start to fill in gaps and pivot and not have to make difficult choices. One other thing I'll say about Seattle here, not to get I'm going to get off subject here a little bit and off seasonish a little bit, but just a point here. If you're the Seattle Seahawks, you immediately are faced with decisions after the Super Bowl about whether or not you want to play the dead cap game that the Eagles have
Mm-hmm.
played for about
Mm-hmm.
the last 5 or 6 off seasons. Not only do you have that next two draft classes that both hit fairly well, they're going to want to get paid, but you've also got Sam Darnold, who yes, he's on the mid-tier contract, but this year it was like 14 or 15 million dollars. Next year it jumps to 36 and 41, which still isn't high end, but goodness gracious, that's a whole lot meatier than a 14 or 15 million dollar cap hit, whatever it was they were laying out this year. So you've got two things sitting there for Seattle. Yes, they're young. Yes, they're hitting. Schneider, though, is going to have to decide, does he trust himself to keep drafting and developing the way the Patriots did all those years, or is he going to switch gears here and play the dead cap game the way the Eagles have the past 5 or 6 years? It's never easy.
Dang it, Ben. Knew you were going to do this. Now I want to talk more about these draft classes individually. So it's so, yes, the draft is so 50-50, and these are such good lessons because what if the Giants had taken Cross instead of Evan Neal, and then Evan Neal was on this team? This team wouldn't have
Yeah.
their left tackle, right? Um, when they drafted JSN, that was when they went four receivers in a row, and it was Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, and um, Zay Flowers all after that. What if they had taken Quentin Johnson? You know, the that same draft when they take Devin Witherspoon 5. What if they had taken not that this, was even in the realm of conversation at the time, but what if they had taken Deontay Banks instead, or done like a trade down from 5, and they're like, we'll pass on Witherspoon, but we'll get one of these other first round corners. Um, Now, ironically, it could have been Christian Gonzalez, but that's not. These things can get flipped so easily, right? It could go in much different ways so quickly. Um, and your point about Seattle, major decisions to make: Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant, Boye Mafe, Ken Walker, um, even Josh Jobe, who we haven't really talked about yet, but Ty Akata. Let's see. I think there's another one on here somewhere. That might be it. Those are all free agents, you know. And now listen, they actually are still set up really well. Set almost 75 million in cap space as of right now. Before you include like draft class and practice squad and stuff. So they are in good shape. Man, they have such an embarrassment of riches because I was like, Uchenna Nwosu, like I feel like I haven't heard anything in a while. He's playing over 50% of the snaps for them too. So that the draft class thing is so interesting, and it this is why you have to hit in this time though, because they're not going to be on this list for long because they're going to pay half those guys, and they're going to have to let those guys go and try to hit again on the draft classes, which we know is so hard to do on a 4 year span, right? Sometimes you're just on a heater. The Saints draft classes, right, from the mid 2010s, the Chiefs at the end of the 2010s and the 2020s, and then you can have a dry spell for a couple of years. So this is why you got to win the Super Bowl now. And we're going to circle back to coaching, but like OC Clint Kubiak, it looks like he's going to be the Raiders head coach if he's not going to be the Cardinals. I don't even know if he's really in the Cardinals, but it looks like he's going to be the Raiders head coach. So now you're talking about your OC is going to go out the door, and so now you got to get the right guy in the building for Sam Darnold. And do you get the younger Kubiak? Let him cook. Yeah, that's what happens. All right, we just did it there. I snuck in a little staff creation segment. All right. That's enough on the draft picks because you and I could just do that forever, but we do have some other topics we're going to get into. So let's get into how you build around those classes. And we mentioned Drake May. And we mentioned how do you get here with not only a rookie contract quarterback, but a guy in year 2 and a guy who was in such a bad situation last year. So I wanted to dig into the quarterbacks next. How do we have these two quarterbacks have such similar profiles coming out of college, and they have such drastically different situations play out in the first 2 years of their NFL career? So last year under Jerod Mayo was a total disaster in New England. The team was 4-13, hardly did anything right. The best thing they did last year was probably have Drake May just sit for the first 5 games. And we even wanted that to be a little longer because remember, he comes in and he plays the Texans. except he actually looked pretty good against the Texans, so maybe he didn't even need to sit those five. But still, just from a process standpoint, you're like, great, you didn't throw him to the Wolves on this disaster team that you put him in. Now this new coaching staff comes in, and it could not be more of a solid staff. Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels put together a team and an offense that just makes so much sense even before the roster is fully ready. Because, like you said, I don't even think this roster is fully in a great place yet. But it gives May so many options to let his talent shine. He's a great drop back passer, but if the offensive talent is outmatched, he can just take off and run when he needs to. And we saw that a lot on this route to the Super Bowl as they faced all these juggernaut AFC defenses. But there's always an answer because McDaniels has just put such a smart offense together. And with Vrabel, the team in all three phases always has that preparedness advantage for any situation. I didn't notice this in the game, but I heard this on a pod reacting to the Broncos Patriots game, and one of the plays when the Broncos were trying to drive towards one of the last two drives when they were trying to drive and the clock was ticking, the Broncos made a substitution, and Vrabel calls for his defensive line to substitute. So not only are you calling for a substitution, you're taking your time getting guys out there. You got 300 pounders like waddling off, but the ref has to stand there, and you just have to wait. And the Broncos, I think, ended up snapping the ball with like a second left on that play because they called for a substitution when they had an advantage. So just stuff like that that Vrabel can do. And I know I did dog the roster some, and we'll talk about it, but it is in a much better place than last year. Four new offensive linemen, where the worst one is still probably better than their best offensive lineman from last year. Um, Plus Stephon Diggs comes in as you give him another shot at a true year after the ACL injury, and it's a great case of an experienced staff coming in and dictating what the young quarterback and team need. Right? They walk into the building and Elliott Wolf's there, and they're like, "We need offensive linemen, and we need a stud number one wide receiver." And yes, it helped that they were in a financial place to spend money, but usually when you're 4-13, you've got money to spend. And they knew exactly where to put all those dollars, even though they couldn't get the number one all pro whoever. They just got like doubles and triples all over the place with every move they made. So what did you think about this overall situation that Drake May kind of walked into as a rookie and the one he's got in year two as improvements were made from last season?
A huge difference, really. And listen, nobody knew what to expect from last year's Patriots coaching staff. A lot of people liked it heading in. I mean, a
Hmm.
lot of people signed off on that, said, "Hey, this is great," and it didn't look good in one year, so they let everybody go. So it's a huge difference. I will say, when Drake May walked in on his rookie season, you're basically expecting slash hoping that he can save the franchise at that point.
Yep.
Once you get Vrabel and McDaniels is working as the OC there, and you spend that money on those, I think it was four guys basically that really constituted the major part of their free agency class last year, and it was huge, better than I expected it to be. Actually, you're really not looking at Drake May to save the franchise anymore. You're looking at him to be a part of the winning. And in spite of that, he put together an almost MVP season. I mean, I know the playoff games haven't been good, but the regular season was fantastic. So it really did change what you needed to get out of him, and that changed the results too. So everybody gets a piece of the credit there if you're dividing up a pie chart. Vrabel, massive. Josh McDaniels probably still not getting enough credit for this. Drake May gets a ton of credit just for being a very talented guy, and then all the people that they brought in too during the free agency. So that it's a huge difference year over the year. Huge.
Let's contrast that to the Jets back in 2019. Let me take you back,
Mm.
Ben. Oh, the Jets. Like New England this year, the Jets had fired Darnold's head coach and offensive coordinator after his rookie season. That was Todd Bowles, and I forget who the OC was at that point. The new coach comes in, though, and we'll just say he didn't have the same resume as Mike Vrabel. As the Tennessee Titans coach, Vrabel had a winning record. He had made three trips to the playoffs in 6 seasons. He went 2-2 in his four games in the playoffs. However, for new Jets coach Adam Gase, he was coming off of a 3-year stint in Miami where he never had a winning record and even one season, and he never made the playoffs. Now it's funny that we always think of Gase in the like abject disaster that was the second season with the Jets and kind of the aftermath where we learned about everything that was bad with the Jets. And th this is my like fuzzy period of the NFL. You'll speak better about this, I'm sure. But like you just look at those Dolphins records and they weren't awful, right? They weren't terrible. But it very clearly just seemed like this isn't ever going to work. And he got to stick it out for 3 years and then immediately got the Patriots job. Whereas Vrabel was like a good coach that lost a power struggle, took a year and like went and worked and consulted with the Cleveland Browns around good coaches like Jim Schwartz and Kevin Stefanski. And we knew he was going to come out of the other side even better. And he was the belle of the ball. Whereas Gase, oh man, I had this somewhere. Where was it? Um, Oh, Gase was not that in the 2019 coaching carousel, belle of the ball. That 2019 carousel included Matt LaFleur, Bruce Arians, and Zach Taylor. So if you just think about like offensive minded coaches, not to mention, I think Vic Fangio got a job in that carousel. Brian Flores got the Dolphins job after Gase was fired. Not that those guys necessarily put offensive staffs together. You would have wanted with Sam Darnold. But if you're thinking about like gosh, LaFleur, Bruce Arians, had they taken that New York job, even Zach Taylor, if they had taken that New York job and worked with Sam Darnold, like who knows what would have happened. Um, since Gase was let go of the by the Jets, he has never coached anywhere. Nobody has given this man another coaching job, college, NFL. Offensive coordinator Dowell Logans went to college where he is still now. This was his first year actually as the head coach of App State. Um, so you're talking about Vrabel coming to New England as this superstar coach in waiting. And we even knew when he left Tennessee, hey, whatever team he's go to, whenever he goes, he's going to make them better. Gase got fired by the Jets, who, and this was the guy hey, all right, we need a guy for Darnold. We need a guy to help Darnold. And once the Jets let go of him, nobody else wanted him to be their coach. So that's the difference in what kind of coaching quality they were getting from that point. The Jets, also didn't make any useful improvements to the roster between 2018 and 2019. The bulk of their free agent money and draft picks went to the defense, signing linebacker CJ Mosley, drafting defensive tackle Quentin Williams, and linebacker Ja'Kai Polite with their first two picks in the draft. They did sign Le'Veon Bell. They signed wide receiver Jamison Crowder and center Ryan Khalil. But Khalil got hurt 7 games in the season. He was clearly on his literal last legs when they signed him. And we know what happened to Le'Veon's career once he got to the Jets. So you talk about the things the two teams focused on, right? Because and don't get me wrong, the Patriots, invested heavily into their defense with their free agent money. Harold Landry and Milton Williams, Spillane, Davis, all those guys. But they still went heavy on offense. Their first 5 picks in the draft were on offense. They spent big on the defense, but they also added Stephon Diggs, Morgan Moses, and Garrett Bradbury to their roster. But I mean, Will Campbell, Jared Wilson on their offensive line were in their first couple picks. Travion Henderson, the running back. So they poured a lot into their offense when they got there. The Jets were like, yeah, we'll sign a running back that didn't play last season. We'll sign a number 2 wide receiver in James Crowder, and we'll sign a 33-year-old center in Ryan Khalil. But then C.J. Mosley, Quinn Williams, that's our big investments for Sam Darnold, which is ironic because the defensive coach was the one who they fired in Todd Bowles, but whatever. Um, so after that, we saw the Jets' third coach come in, and Saleh and GM Joe Douglas, who was there and started in 2019. And they recognized it was just time to reset for Darnold at that point. They move him to Carolina. They draft Zach Wilson, and the rest is history. So take me back, thinking about the Jets at that time, and thinking about those moves that I kind of laid out. Just react, compare and contrast. What was Sam Darnold walking into, coming out of year one, going into year two with the Jets, and did he have any chance?
Probably not. In all honesty, not to overhype Sam Darnold because that does happen, but this was a guy who legitimately looked like he had enough mobility and a big enough arm to where he should have done something, and he is now showing that. Right now, you can question the decision making and the interceptions, and that's all legit. Okay, and you can question at what point if he didn't have a star-studded defense and a seems to be all-star offensive coordinator in the making running the show, you could make the argument that he wouldn't look as brilliant as he looks because he had something real similar in Minnesota last year with a top tier defense and a star studded offensive coordinator running the show. But all that aside, it was so bad and dreadful in New York. Not necessarily the roster building, although you could argue moving more resources over to the offensive side for sure. But dang it, Adam Gase, man, bless his heart. I actually did not know that he hadn't had a coaching job since that New York Jets thing. So that part is fascinating. He should never have gotten that second head coaching gig. It was not good down there in Miami for the first bid there. And give me just a second. I'm pulling back over to where his stuff is. He had the playoff appearance, and that was fine, but it got real bad real quick. And when you watch those Miami Dolphins games where Adam Gase was coaching, you just realized this guy should not be a head coach. Coordinator, fine. This guy should not be a head coach. I mean, it was really bad. You could tell he just didn't have a feel for it. And then a lot of times when he would get on after the games and start talking, it would get worse. Went from bad to worse real fast. He never should have gotten that New York Jets job. He really is the poster child for retreads that should not have been given second chances. I mean, absolutely. That's really the first name that comes to mind. Having said that, he probably should have a coaching job somewhere, NFL or college. I don't actually understand that. We'll leave that for another day. But to answer your real point, it was bad for Sam Darnold. That's just a disaster in the making. You have a Jets franchise that already is unstable and dysfunctional all the time anyway, and then you bring in a head coach. Listen, I'm sure we're seeing it this coaching cycle. I'm sure a lot of head coaches really probably did not want to go and work with the New York Jets. And so, you're not picking from the cream of the crop. You're getting what you can. And out of what they could get, for some reason, they decided to pick Adam Gase. So it it was not a good setup for Sam Darnold. It was a really bad setup, and it only got worse, unfortunately.
The Jets ownership situation is it just what that being around that team is like because I didn't look to see if those other guys like LaFleur and Arians had interviews there or they were on their list or whatnot. But yeah, you got to think, man, we're seeing it with the Browns this year. But like we were really excited about Aaron Glenn to be a head coach when he got that job last year. And now everything that's happening this week with him and he was gonna have Wink Martindale be DC and then on Wink's flight to New York to like essentially sign the contract. Glenn tells him I decided I'm actually gonna call the plays on defense, so you could still come if you want to. And then they hire somebody they never even had a formal interview with, and they keep their OC through all this time of the offseason and then just fire their offensive coordinator like this week. Um, you a lot of people think it is Woody Johnson just kind of stepping in, like comes back from whatever vacation he was on at this end of the season. He's like, wait, you kept all these. Wait, we kept Aaron Glenn. Well, I can't fire him now. So, dude, you got to fire all your coaches and change what's happening here. You're supposed to coach the defense. They had no interceptions. You better start calling the plays for the defense. Tell whoever to kick rocks, basically. So you do wonder how much that played into it. The what head coach they could have gotten at that time. But I mean, I think about like for the Patriots, if we try to put them in the other light, if they don't end up with Vrabel in this cycle, I mean, if I wonder what someone like Pete Carroll would have done getting to this roster, right? Not that he was ever coming back to New England, but he went to the Raiders and it was such a disaster. But that's because he went to a team that was already so bad. If he came to a team that had a quarterback in place and money to spend, would that have been better? Um, would if Aaron Glenn had come to the Patriots, right? What would that look like? How much of this changed just because you got literally Mike Vrabel, who, along with Ben Johnson, they're both in the same coaching class there, the best head coach candidate we've seen in years, and or would one step down have made a huge difference, right? We'll never know. But you have this quarterback already in place. It feels like the bar is lower for what you need that coach to do. But it feels like they just went above and beyond and hit everything out of the park from a organizational structure standpoint. There's that weird power vacuum with just like what Elliot Wolf is and was as a GM decision maker. Like you don't really, and Vrabel just comes in and like takes up that space and can take it over. Right at the top of when we started this subject, a few minutes ago, and you mentioned like Gerard Mayo and his crew, right? What I wonder what they could have done if they were in a better standpoint with the roster, right? Mike McDonald comes in and finishes up the roster, but you mentioned it. Schneider had done a good job, and Carroll had done a good job of drafting and developing guys to where the team was pretty, a foundation was laid. We feel like it doesn't, we barely have the roster's foundation for New England. So I wonder, I would like to see Mayo get another shot at some point because he was just touted as this like great leader of men and great like communicator for so long that we didn't even think it was going to get this bad. But maybe you just need someone with either the experience or like a mastermind tactician when the roster is subpar. So I would like to see Mayo get another chance eventually. Um, Anything else on kind of the situations for those quarterbacks in their second year or where the Patriots or Seahawks stand as rosters right now for you?
Yeah, for these specific quarterbacks, these specific teams, uh, my respect for Vrabel just could not be higher. And you and I talked about it when Tennessee let him go. That we just really thought they were doing the wrong thing, and we didn't wait till Vrabel showed up here in the Super Bowl to say that. We said that back then. This is a bad decision, and it's really only gotten worse in Tennessee. Right? They are starting to look rather dysfunctional, similar to what the Browns and the Jets are starting to put out there. It's not been great, but we'll see if they can turn that around. But if we're able to come in here and do this, and listen, Sean Payton, as far as I'm concerned, in Denver, doing the exact same thing. He just didn't get to the Super Bowl, and
Yep.
probably has a definitely has a less talented quarterback there with Bo Nix. But the same things are going on in both places, man. You talk about guys that came in immediately, had already won in other places, came in immediately here and just kept on winning. I mean, it's tremendous. They're savvy that they have. They just have a gift for this. They were born to be pro football head coaches, and that doesn't mean they're gonna make every right decision or show up in the Super Bowl every 2 seasons, but it just means they're really good at this, and they both deserve that kind of credit. So, hats off. I do feel exactly what you're saying there with Gerard Mayo. I don't think he got a fair shake, and I don't see how anybody can say that he did. I know it was a bad season, but it was 1 year, and it was his first year. So he deserves. He may not get it, but he deserves another shot somewhere where he could actually get it for 2 or 3 seasons, hopefully three, and get a real chance to develop something here because very few coaches, very few of them actually just hit the ground running in year one.
Maybe the lesson is if you're gonna hire a retread, make it someone that like has for the most part won games and they're a retread because like their situation got weird and they got kind of pushed out, as opposed to retreads like they lost a bunch of games and now we'll just give them another chance. It
See,
offline, we had good conversations about like Robert Saleh getting the Titans job and
right,
um I mean he didn't have a winning season with the Jets, so we'll see what happens with the Titans. I have more faith than you do, but
right.
Rabel or Sean Payton as retreads are a lot better than yeah, Adam Gase or um I mean shoot like you I mean look at the guys that have been hired this year obviously like Stefanski seems like a solid retread. Harbaugh seems like a solid retread. Um, but guys who just coached for, got a job for 2 years and then failed and then get another shot at it kind of retread. Um,
Is
Especially without time in between. It's like, what have you learned since you just failed, 6 weeks
Yeah.
ago? But
It's
let's talk about the,
exactly why I trump Brian Flores so much, is because
yeah.
he showed that he could actually win games. Now he
Hmm.
didn't get them to any promised land, and he didn't get along with people very well. But that phrase you used, the situation got weird there, and that was why he got ousted.
Yes.
It wasn't because he wasn't winning games.
Hmm. He might have got pushed out because he was winning too many games. Um, let's parlay this into poor coaching and how that does impact QBs across history, right? So it's not just Sam
Yeah,
Darnold. But so let's look at this. So I looked at the time period between when Sam Darnold was drafted in 2018 through Drake May's 2024 draft. And obviously the 24 class, we don't know what's going to happen yet. Those guys are still so young. But we'll make a little bit of an assumption on a few of those guys. So 27 quarterbacks have been drafted in the first round across those drafts, across those 6 seasons, I guess 7 drafts. 21 of those players started in 24 or more games in their time with their drafted team. So this is kind of weeding out guys with small sample sizes: Josh Rosen, Anthony Richardson, Trey Lance, Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy, a couple others. So if I'm working with 21 first round quarterbacks that started for essentially 2 years, 11 of those 21 had a head coach and or offensive coordinator change after their rookie season. So just 1 year in, and the guy they were going to most for game plan, development, uh, um, play calling, change after just one season. Those guys were Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, Drake May. So out of those 11 names, what would we say? Like five of those 11 were successes to their drafting team, and that's like a shaky even number. One of those I counted as Baker because Baker was like led them to some playoff success and some regular season success, and Trevor Lawrence had up and down success. I'm including him in that, but for the most part, those are quarterbacks that did not have successful tenures with their drafting team. Five additional quarterbacks had or are having a head coach or OC change after their second year. Kenny Pickett, Zach Wilson, C.J. Stroud, uh, Jaden Daniels, surprisingly, and Bo Nix. Also sneaky if someone's not paying attention. Joe Lombardi, OC for the Broncos, was fired. Um, Probably so they could just keep QB coach Davis Webb, but we'll see what happens. Two definite misses in that: Kenny Pickett, Zach Wilson. Three question marks because now we're not sure what Stroud's going to look like. Daniels, he was so injured, but he had such a great rapport with Cliff Kingsbury, so we don't know what that's going to look like. Bo Nix, we'll see. The only guys that essentially kept their head coach and OC for really their whole rookie contract for essentially 4 seasons for all these guys: Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, and Jordan Love. Those guys had the same head coach and or offensive coordinator all 4 seasons, so essentially from the time they were drafted through their fourth year. Murray is a hit the way like Baker, Lawrence, and Stroud would be called hits, so we'll give them that. So that's 5 hits, 5 for 5. When let's stop there. I have some, of my own thoughts, but those are the numbers, right? 21 quarterbacks, 11 had head coach or OC changes after year one, five after year two, and then five guys had their same head coach or OC all 4 years of their rookie contract, basically. Uh, what thoughts do you have when I sent that over?
So there's two quick thoughts. I will keep them concise because we want to develop this conversation. The first one is if your quarterback shows signs in year one of being anything, and I mean anything, you know, guess what? The head coach has got a good 3 or 4 years to work with, and the quarterback should keep getting better because he already showed something in year one. So that's a great pairing, right? Whenever you show anything in that first season, I mean, a legit something, that coach and quarterback can carry on for 4 or 5 seasons, even if one of the others is limited, whether it's maybe the coach in Cincinnati who's limited or whether it's the quarterback in some of the other places that's limited. If it shows, well, you can carry that through. Both of you got some good job security there for a while, make a bunch of money too, and hopefully win a lot of games. The other thing that kicks in hard here, man, I mean hard, is the bad cycle that the bad franchises seem to stay in. So you consistently have either unstable, dysfunctional, or incapable franchises drafting at the top, grabbing all these quarterbacks at the top, and influencing all these statistics that every one of which we look at. Now, in some years, you may be drafted number one overall, and it may just not be a good quarterback class, right? It may be a group of limited QBs, and you take the best
Mhm.
one because you need a guy. And in a lot of cases, they're walking into a roster that's not great and a coach that isn't great because coaches don't want to go to that organization and coach. So
Right.
it's a cycle that really badly repeats itself. And then sometimes you get lucky and you're drafting one of these, like you'd like to call them, aliens during every third or fourth season. You get lucky and have, because that's about it. Every third or fourth season, we get one of these quarterbacks that really truly is legit. He looks like he's got elite capabilities, right? So you get a little lucky there. Everybody else, man, they're just scrapping and scrounging, and these bad franchises are just cycling it all over again every 3 to 5 years. Ugly cycle.
Yeah, the chicken or egg concept came to mind for me as well, right?
Yeah.
Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow are three of the top four quarterbacks in the league. That tends to make a coach pretty safe, right? Love is a top 10 guy.
Hmm.
Coach is pretty safe. Kyler Murray,
Yeah.
even before the injury, was considered like an above average quarterback, right? A top half of the
Right.
league kind of quarterback. That
Right.
gives you some level of security, especially when you're that offensive minded head coach and you're the guy that's putting together the offense, putting together the development for the quarterback. And you can see that direct line correlation. Um, but like, would those guys have been really good with any coach? I mean, like you could even say Kyler being above average with Cliff Kingsbury, who like there was always dysfunction happening. Is like, shoot, maybe he was actually held back by Cliff Kingsbury to a degree. But he seems like the quote
Yeah.
unquote negative outlier for the guys that had stability. If you just grade it based on having stability, him kind of never really cracking that top 10 quarterback would be considered negative compared to the guys of that ilk, Allen Jackson, Burrow, and Love. But then, Herbert, Drake May, Caleb Williams seem like they'll be the positive outliers in terms of they had a change after their rookie season, but they still look like they're going to be good. Now, Caleb and Drake May needed it, right? Quite frankly, I do wonder, like I said, if they had let Gerard Mayo really have some time, and Alex Van Pelt is a guy that I think is considered like a fine offensive mind, so like maybe you could have continued to develop and do something there with Drake May, but obviously getting a chance to go to Vrabel and McDaniels is not anything you should pass up on. Caleb Williams, his whole staff got fired during his rookie year. There was no shot there, so obviously those two have significantly upgraded. But like Herbert, sneaky. I forget, was Steichen there Herbert's rookie season? Because if he was, it was him and then Lombardi and then Moore and then Roman. So he's had like four OCs in 5, 6 years or something. So now obviously he's gonna have Mike McDaniel, but that only even might be a year. Like who knows? Um, so yeah, I also thought about like the chicken or egg thing. Like how much could that be impacted? Let I want to push this forward a little bit now. I'm gonna put you on the spot. And then we can come back to like this history aspect if you want to at all.
Yep.
But Cam Ward and Jackson Dart were 2025 first round quarterbacks, and both are going to have new head coaches and new offensive coordinators in 2026. Robert Saleh and Brian Daboll for Ward, and John Harbaugh with we still don't know if the offensive coordinator in New York Giant with the New York Giants because Monken's going to Cleveland. How do you think this is going to go for them? Where do you think they're going to fall? Is this a head coach OC change that will ultimately be more helpful for those guys, or do you think more harmful?
Well, it couldn't hurt in either case. I mean, just absolutely, it could not hurt. Okay, so
Yep.
I think both guys are probably. I'm sure they got attached to whoever they were working for, but both guys are probably ultimately at least going to have a chance to be better here, especially if the focus is on helping them. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend your top five pick or your top seven pick on offense, right? I'm not necessarily demanding that, but what I will say, if I'm at all looking for Cam Ward or Jackson Dart to develop, have a chance to get better, and be our guy for the next 8 to 10 years, I'm going to develop as not every resource, but a lot of resources toward making that happen. For instance, I did a mock draft 2 nights ago for the Tennessee Titans, and I drafted wide receivers at the first pick and the second pick. I didn't plan that. That's just who was
Hmm.
sitting there. And I was like, why the heck not? Let's give Cam Ward these guys to work with.
Yep.
Why wouldn't you? Unless somebody else on the defensive side is just sitting there, why not give him two more guys like a Carnell Tate? And I think I went with the kid out of Louisville, Chris Bell. I gave him both guys. It's like, let's roll with it. Let's give him
Heck yeah.
every chance to hit because it's the most important thing. And then same thing in New York, whether you draft offensive line, wide receiver, both, or you go over and get a guy in the secondary and then come back and draft, offensive line and wide receiver. You have got to put all the focus on making sure these guys hit. You've really got to. It doesn't mean you ignore the defense, but you've got to put a ton of resources. It really does come down, I think, though, to the guy calling the plays, the offensive coordinator. I think that's the big one right there. So even though, I'm a little less thrilled with Saleh as HC of the Tennessee Titans, Dable seems to know what he's doing as offensive coordinator, laying a good foundation, working with the quarterback. So feel good about that. And we'll see who Harbaugh pulls in there for Jackson Dart. That one's still a little bit iffy, but I kind of trust Harbaugh to get that right. So we'll see.
I just thought of a OC for Harbaugh. We'll get to that. It's funny that Daboll leaves the Giants and Dart, one 2025 first round pick, and he's gonna upgrade essentially to the rookie, to the number one overall pick in Cam Ward.
Yes.
But I love that situation. And I honestly love the receiver thing for Tennessee. We'll see who wins that battle of who they get to draft. But because Dable saw what Stephon Diggs did for Josh Allen, right? Getting that number one guy, and he had dreams of Malik Neighbors and Jackson Dart this season before Neighbors goes out with the knee injury. So he's going to be like, listen, man, we need a number one dude to unlock this guy to do the things I want on offense, to do the things that are going to help make him comfortable. I mean, look at Drake May getting Stephon Diggs this year. Look at all these young quarterbacks when they have a guy they can go to. It makes a huge difference. Um, and for Harbaugh going to so it's funny that the Titans are upgrading by getting Daboll, but the Giants might be upgrading for Dart, not in the sense of what their schematics on offense are going to be, but having such a more stable personality at head coach. And listen, it's not that Harbaugh's like this nice, soft, warm and fuzzy guy, but we saw what Daboll was like from a personality standpoint, head coach. Now Dart, I think, loved it, and they had a great relationship. But you're going to put a better environment for Dart to succeed in with Harbaugh. I don't think this is going to happen because I don't know how relationships like this would potentially work. And considering it just didn't work for him in his last stop, but it would be funny to see Harbaugh go back with Greg Roman, with the who gets fired from the Chargers, but was his longtime OC. Roman, longtime Harbaugh guy, and Roman did a great job of getting, I think, both offenses with the Ravens and his time there and the Chargers to a nice baseline, right? A minimum level. Everybody just got hurt on the offense this year for the Chargers, but even those Ravens offenses, Lamar won an MVP with Greg Roman as his play caller and offensive designer. You might not get that final step, extra layer of what you want in the playoffs, but I do wonder if just like, hey man, we just need to put in an offense that Jackson Dart can succeed in. We can have a good run game. He can run a little bit. We can use the athleticism. I wonder if Greg Roman reuniting with John Harbaugh would be a possibility in New York, to establish that baseline. And especially because at this point in the process, Harbaugh thought he was going to have Monken. So I wonder how much he's kind of scrambling a little bit versus he's going to get the kind of person he wants right away. Um, but what do you think about that? Would you want Greg Roman in New York with Jackson Dart, or do you want Harbaugh to find something new?
At this point, given that a lot of the offensive minded guys have already found jobs, then yes, I'd be totally fine with that. It does set a good baseline there because I don't really think, and I'm not trying to slam Jackson Dart here because you know where both you and I were heading into him in the draft. He's been outstanding, but he really does strike me if he continues to pan out. You never know, but he really does tend to strike me more in the Eli Manning Captain America role there in New York, who is just going to step up in every big moment, but he may not be the Hall of Fame passer that some
Hmm.
other guys like, Peyton Manning was. Whereas Cam Ward, and again, I'm still not convinced Cam Ward is franchise savior material. It does look like you would be hoping that Cam Ward could really catch fire from a high volume
Yeah.
passing angle, which is why having Dable and having hopefully two more wide receivers for him to work with at some point, you would hope that would be the fuel for the fire there in Tennessee. So yeah, I'm with you there on Roman to the Giants.
Yeah, floor raiser for the Giants, and then ceiling raiser for the Titans. Hey, don't be too quick to push out my guy Alec Iomanor. He might drop 10% of balls for a couple of years here until he figures that out. But that's a dude.
No, I still like him
Um,
too. I agree. Yes,
yeah,
totally.
you could have three
Yeah,
receivers. It's fine. We'll be in 11. It's fine.
right.
All right. Let
Yes.
let's our last big topic here. Let's reframe now. Still coaches. Let's zero in on these coaches in the Super Bowl. Mike Vrabel, first year as Patriots head coach. Mike McDonald, second year as the Seahawks head coach. When I thought of this, ESPN did the funny thing of two Mikes in the Super Bowl. It's the fifth time in history that is same first name or whatever they were doing. That hit Mikes and Sean's in the conference championship games. But I was like, okay, is it rare to have guys so early in their tenure on both sides be the head coach in game? And how rare is it just in general for a head coach to be in his first 2 years and make it to the Super Bowl? So big picture from 2012 to 2022, 10 of 11 Super Bowls involved a head coach that was in his first 3 years with the team. Now, it is rare, I think in almost none of these games going back to 2012 was it a matchup? So I do think this is rare, having both guys in their first 2 years. I don't know when this last happened because before 2012 we're getting to like a lot of Patriots Super Bowls, so a lot of Belichick ruining that kind of potential. A lot of Tony Dungy, Mike Tom, all that stuff. So, but one head coach has been in his first 3 years with the team in 10 of 11 Super Bowls from 2012 to 2022. Obviously, 23 and 24, those were rematches, right? Andy Reid with Shanahan with Sirianni a couple times. So in 2022, Sirianni was in his second year when the Eagles made that Super Bowl against the Chiefs. In 2021, Zach Taylor was in year three for the Bengals. In 2020, Arians was in his second year with the Bucks, so on and so forth. If you want me to give you specific ones, I can. But going back to 2012, when Jim Harbaugh was in his second year with the 49ers, there's almost always been an early tenure head coach. Um, what do you think is the reason for that? What do you think goes into a coach coming in? Because if it happens, essentially every year, and we're having it now, we're kind of resetting that timeline. If it happens this frequently, what do you think it is about getting a new head coach in the building and turning things around and getting to the Super Bowl?
Hey, you're in luck. I did a write up on two major things for this podcast, one of which we really haven't touched on, which is situation matters for quarterbacks. The other one was early tenure head coaches. All right.
Heck yeah,
So,
let's go.
making Super Bowls. I came up with four things. Okay. And obviously, I feel like probably two of them are way bigger than the other two, but real quick, here they are. So, this isn't long. Number one is this is a numbers game. Okay. So, the NFL has a very high turnover rate, right? You have probably anywhere from 5 to 10 coaches a year that get fired. I mean, the whole staff have,
Hmm.
usually. So that's 16 to 31% of the league that gets fired every single offseason. So just from a numbers standpoint, there's a fair chance that a first, second, third year guy is going to show up making a run, and that may not be Super Bowl run, but still, when you're crunching numbers, that does produce it. The second thing, and I think this really is one of the big ones here, culture change. The new coach just brings in a breath of fresh air, new life, new energy. Maybe he's kicking tail, or maybe he's just more stable. But in any case, you've changed the culture. And it felt like, oddly enough, it felt like Vrabel did that in New England, where
Yep.
you had 1, 2, or 3 seasons, depending on how you want to view it, of Belichick really not something was starting to falter there, right?
Hmm.
And then you had the Gerard Mayo season, so it felt like Vrabel was fresh air guy. We've seen that many times. I think that really is a big one. Somebody is able to come in and change culture. It's hard to do that everywhere, though. With the Jets, the Browns, the Dolphins, we really have not seen that in a very long time. The Raiders, I mean, in some cases, the owner is so pervasive, it's really hard for a coach, even a good one, to come in and change that culture because the owner is just so, you know, lousy and pervasive. The other thing I came up with that I really feel like is the huge one, exo scheme sharpness. Okay, we've seen a number of these guys. I don't think we saw it that much, 20, 30 years ago. It just was not as common. But we've seen that a lot the past decade and even the past 5 years. The new coach just has a great feel for X's and O's. Maybe he's sharper and better than the previous staff. Maybe he's just doing something a little different, or maybe he just has a great talent and feel for play calling. He was born to do this. But that really is I think one of the two big things. You've brought in a guy who actually has talent. He's not just a football coach. It doesn't mean that the last guy was truly lousy, but you brought in somebody, and so those are two things I think right there: culture change or exo scheme sharpness that can immediately put you up. I think that happens a lot. And one last thing that I will add on, I think we saw this with the Patriots as well a little bit, to be honest, is a talent upgrade. It's not unusual when you bring in a new coaching staff. Sometimes you just get lucky and you collect your quarterback. You get a new GM too. and the talent goes up real fast. So that happens too. The new staff is working with a newly drafted quarterback as well as some high end talent, maybe from the past couple of drafts. So we see that too. I don't think that's the most common one. That tends to be number three, I think. But the two big things I really thought of were you've got a guy who knows how to change the culture, or you got a guy whose schemes are just really they're way up there. So
Oh, Ben, how your brain works because I have some numbers to go with those 3 points that you just made. I took the
wow,
10
wow,
Super Bowl teams with those early tenure head coaches, and I wanted to break down, contextualize, okay, what else might be happening? And now here's the thing for somebody
yeah,
that might be a naysayer in this, I thought it was as I was going through and I was like, this is happening every year. I was like, okay, well, surely a lot of these teams are going to be like 7, 8, 9 win teams that were good and just need to get over the hump, right?
yeah,
Or even
yeah,
like 8, 9, 10 win teams that are like good playoff team, new head coach, new voice, and get you over the hump. No,
yeah.
9 of those 10 teams had losing records the year before that new coach came in. So a lot of times it
Wow.
is no, this team is actually underperforming. So a new head coach had to come in and totally turn around. So of
Mm-hmm.
those 10, I wanted to break it down further. 3 of those 10 teams the head coach coming in actually coincided with a franchise quarterback coming in.
Okay.
2013, Peyton Manning comes to the Broncos. 2020, Tom Brady goes to the Bucks. Um, and that's obviously John Fox in 2013 coming to the Broncos. Bruce Arians in 2020 coming to the Bucks. I think John Fox actually might have come in 2011, 2012, something like that. But then the Bengals and Burrow, their 21 Super Bowl, Burrow came in the year after Zach Taylor joined the Bengals. So 3 times a franchise quarterback also came in around the time the new head coach did. Twice was when a scheme guy, an offensive innovator, came in and took over. McVay in with the Rams for their 2018 Super Bowl, Shanahan in his 2019 Super Bowl run with the 49ers, guys that are just coordinators, gonna be on the cutting edge. They take over for teams that both I forget exactly was it Chip Kelly right before Shanahan came in? So maybe it was another offensive minded guy, but like McVay obviously comes in for Jeff Fisher, who just like longtime coach, like old school mentality, and then we get this cutting edge offensive mind to come in. Um, Twice it was the Eagles, and it was just the Philly thing of we need new vibes because everybody hates each other right now because we're in Philly, and that's just what we do. So we're good for a while, and then everyone's mad. So let's get a new head coach for this roster that was constructed really well because we're a really smart franchise, and we'll go to a Super Bowl. So that's how the Eagles work. And then one year was Gary Kubiak just taking over a 12-win Broncos team that already had Peyton Manning. So that's kind of the outlier. The other two that were really interesting were Jim Harbaugh coming to San Francisco in 2012, and like that's culture guy, right? And I think that was right
Right.
after Singletary. So this hard ass that's yelling at everybody, and then you get Harbaugh coming in, who's tough, but like loves everybody, just loves football and is just happy to be there. But also what they do, this one's going to hit all of yours. So Harbaugh is culture. They draft Aldon Smith and hire Vic Fangio, and then they have the best defense in the league and they make that Super Bowl against the Ravens, right? So like they have the two Smith guys playing defensive end that year, just ruining everybody. That Bowman and Willis at linebacker, just ruining everybody's lives. And Vic Fangio comes in as the DC for Harbaugh, and they just have the best defense that we've ever seen. And they get there. So that's a mix of culture, talent, and scheme.
Yeah.
And then the 2016 Super Bowl run, Dan Quinn was in his second year in Atlanta. And they built they actually didn't have very good drafts, but he comes in, he helps the defense. But who's his offensive coordinator? It's Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
And Shanahan took 2 years to really get that thing running. But that was one of the best offenses we had ever seen in 2016 with Atlanta. Ryan's MVP, almost 5,000 yards, that whole thing. So all those things you touch, and I also wrote just like you're getting the old stuff out, which is just like necessary sometimes, but you're getting a culture reset. Maybe you're getting a schematic upgrade on one side of the ball or the other, but also maybe it just comes with some new systems of acquiring talent, and I think we get that in this Super Bowl because Mike McDonald gets this team that's already pretty ready made, but he is just bringing a schematic overload to the defense, and the gap in his with his first year was Ryan Grubb as OC just did not work. And now he's got Clint Kubiak because, hey, he's being on the cutting edge of defense makes him be able to see what kind of offense do I need based on what I'm facing. And Pete Carroll just wasn't able to do that anymore. He wasn't able to get the right offensive guy in to really build on things and really attack modern defenses. And then Vrabel is that like cultural reset and brings McDaniels with him. So he's more in that hardball vein of I'm bringing a great coordinator with me. I'm resetting the culture, and I know I'm experienced, so I know what talent we need to go get. Um, I think that yeah, I think that's a perfect encapsulation of what this is and what it's meant to the two teams.
And I will say, it did mildly surprise me that that many, say, first, second, third year guys, whatever the number was, would actually show up in the Super Bowl that many years in a row. Because it's not,
Yes.
oh, they had a winning season or, oh, they made the playoffs. It's they showed up in the Super Bowl. But I feel like at a certain point, momentum kicks in once
Yep.
everybody in the building starts to realize this train is moving in the right direction and it's moving at a good speed. Boom, the synergy that kicks in really starts to take you to new heights. And everybody talks about building belief and building confidence and building everything up. It's easy to talk about. It's very hard to do. But once you get a guy that's got it pointing in the right direction, it really can pick up speed, and that's why it often can fuel you through the playoffs into a Super Bowl spot.
Yeah. And the first year of the coach's tenure is especially rare. Of those 11 instances, it's only happened twice before, and it was Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers, who took a 4-12 team to the Super Bowl the following season, and then Gary Kubiak, which is different because he took over a 12-win team that had already made a Super Bowl a couple
Right.
years prior and just helped out the offense a little bit. Um, But yeah, I was really surprised at how consistent that was. But this is especially rare. So this is really awesome to see. This is really cool for us to see as people who have fallen in love with the coaching carousel pretty kind of accidentally, I think, and have kind of become obsessed with it. And now I'm going to ask you the next spin ahead forward question. Then we have 10 new coaches. Well, right now we have 8 because the Cardinals Raiders are going to get Clint Kubiak. I'm pretty confident in saying that. The Cardinals, I have no idea what they're going to do. But that's the Cardinals. Um, who is this going to be in the next 3 years, Ben? What couple teams that got a new head coach this year are going to get to a Super Bowl in the next 3 years? So obviously there's the Giants and Harbaugh, who we've talked about. There's the Falcons and Stefanski. There's the Steelers and McCarthy. There's the Titans and Robert Saleh. We're ignoring the Steelers. Stupid Steelers. I haven't potted since this has happened. I'm not talking about it. The Bills and Joe Brady, the Dolphins and Jeff Hafley, the Ravens and Minter, and the Cardinals and Raiders. We still don't know what's happening there. Who do you think is? And I'll make this as easy as possible. Okay, who is the best chance to make the Super Bowl in the next 3 seasons from the teams that changed head coaches this year?
Now I'm going to give you four, and I'll pick one. Okay, but three of them go in one class. Okay, I mean,
I
well,
also
I
have
say three.
4 ahead of the other, so let's see if it's the same 4.
Yeah, okay. Two of them belong in the same class. Bills, Ravens. I mean, you've got two of the
Yes.
top four quarterbacks in
Yep.
the league.
Yeah. It's kind of cheating, but
You
yeah.
it's cheating. You're walking
Yeah.
into the exact same situation Kubiak did with the Broncos all those
Exactly.
years ago. It's no different. All right. So they are expecting you in the next year or two to show up in the Super Bowl. If not,
Right. Yep.
your butt's out, right?
Yes. Hmm.
It, you don't get as long as those last guys got. So those are the two. That's cheating. My third one would be the Giants. I think this is
Hmm.
probably my best bet here with Harbaugh.
Yep.
It feels like, and again, I'm not trying to say Shane is one of the great 8 to 10 GMs in the league, but it feels like there is a base there to work with.
Hmm.
It feels like you have a captain quarterback there to work with. It feels like the energy's there. And now you've added a guy who's already been there and done it. So I feel like that's a great direction. The other guy I'll add in is the guy that I wasn't truly excited for, but as the coaching cycle has turned here, I feel good about, and that's the Miami Dolphins with Halfley. Okay,
Ooh.
and again, I'm not I'm not even that high on Halfley. I really like him. I don't love him, but there's enough people that do. Still, I'm still a little worried about this organizational thing, but I don't feel like the Dolphins owner is as dysfunctional or involved as, say, the Jets, the Browns. and I forget the other team we were talking about tonight. We were criticizing for it, but it feels like a good head coach, general manager could settle in there and put something together. So I feel good about that, even though it's going to take some time. So if I was going to pick one of the new guys, that's where I was going with that, right?
Hmm,
Somebody
hmm,
who
hmm.
hasn't done it before in a place that it hasn't been expected for a very long time. That would be the Dolphins over some of these other places.
And yet, I sent you that thing about the Dolphins and hiring the Texans assistant O-line coach because he worked with
Yeah,
Bobby Slowick, who they retained and promoted to offensive coordinator because he was on McDaniel's staff last year. Doesn't feel great. Doesn't feel great for the Dolphins offensive line for 2026. But I gave you a 3-year window, so you know if they draft a couple studs on the offensive line, maybe the coach doesn't matter, and Hafley gets a good defense, and they figure out who their quarterback is. Is that with Malik Willis at quarterback, or do you figure there's going to be a different quarterback there? Let me really put you on the spot.
let's go for a different quarterback there. Yeah,
You're actually just
not
cheating, and you're
this
like,
year.
they're
Not
gonna
this year.
have the first overall pick, and it's just gonna be
Right.
because Arch Manning takes them there.
Yeah, Arch Manning, or
Um,
who's the other guy? Hey, there's a kid. Well, it might be 2 years from now. There's a kid in California that I loved, Sangapala Bailey. I've lost his name. Anyway, fantastic. There's a kid in SoCal, Mayava. I like. There's another kid around.
mhm,
Yeah, not this year.
okay. Um, we mentioned Salah before, and I think if Dayball can maybe stick for a couple of years, that would really help things with Ward. And then you're just banking on like that, the quarterback is the guy. We don't know who the Raiders coach is going to be, but like if Kubiak and Mendoza are there, and they've got money to spend
Yeah.
over the next few years, like that's interesting. But like I'm not banking on the Raiders. I'm just not gonna do it. Let me see what all that kind of looks like after a year or so first before I make any grand proclamations. I'm not liking what's happening with the Falcons. I had that rant to you earlier today. We're only at an hour 16. I'll do a quick 60-second on what's happening with the Falcons. So the Falcons been before the off season. It was like, hey, quarterback situation's not great. Penix surgery. Who knows how long he's going to be out? Probably have to reset quarterback. They'll do it with a new coach, new GM. They don't have first round pick. Okay, they take a gap here, but if they move on from Kirk Cousins, they can save some money, right? They move on from Cousins, they get a mid tier backup kind of guy for 1 year, and then they draft somebody in 27, or they draft a day two guy and do the whole thing. And then they put in this new thing on Cousins' contract where they give him essentially a guarantee date. I think March 16th. It's like a couple days after the new league year opens, and that's a faith of goodwill kind of gesture to Cousins for, hey, we won't keep you on through the draft or through the offseason and then just cut you so you have nowhere to go. You can be a priority free agent still for somebody if we decide you're not the guy for us. And in exchange for that, we're lowering your base salary to like $2 million. We're pushing that money into the 2027 part of your deal. Which really to me screams like, hey, we actually think we're going to keep Cousins. And, by the end of the year, I was like, keep Cousins for a year, let that ride out, and just see what happens. Because they were actually, I think they were projected to have like 17 mil in cap space without moving on from him. So it's like, you know what, you can keep him, you can do some other things, get a little money. And then Stefanski's brought in. It's like Stefanski was his OC in Minnesota. All right, it's a done deal. They're keeping Cousins. And then today, the Athletic reports that they're likely to move on from Cousins, which because they put all of his base salary into 2027 is actually going to hurt their cap because they're going to have more dead cap this year in doing that. And they don't have a first round pick and they don't have a quarterback. And they made all those decisions with his contract before they had a GM. So I don't know if that was Matt Ryan making that decision. I don't know if that was Arthur Blank making that decision to just be nice to Kirk Cousins. I don't know what all that was. But anyways, 2 minute rant on the Falcons. So needless to say, I don't feel great about where the Falcons are at, even if I think Stefanski is a pretty good coach. All right. So to answer those questions, Bills and Ravens we could see making it in the next 3 years. Giants we could see making it. Because yeah, they got that loaded defensive line, and if Dart at least hits a reasonable threshold, and we'll see if Malik Neighbors, the knee injury stuff for Neighbors is coming back a little sketchy though. He's still apparently on crutches, so some people are kind of worried about where his knee is at, which makes sense. But we'll see. It's fun. It's been a fun coaching carousel. It's a fun Super Bowl matchup. Two really good coaches, two really good teams. Let's circle this thing all the way back to Ben. Let's make a prediction. Um, what's your prediction for the game, man? Who's gonna win this game? if you got a score prediction or just like a stylistic, hey, this is how the game's gonna go, throw it out there. What do you think's gonna happen? I don't know what Super Bowl number it is. What do you think's gonna happen in this year's Super Bowl?
I've got Seattle winning in what I think should be a close and fun game. I really feel like I don't feel like there's any reason. Maybe the first quarter's a little stilted or something. I don't feel
Hmm.
like there's any reason these two teams shouldn't put out a pretty fun game here and a relatively close one. But I do like Seattle better for a couple of reasons. The Seattle machine just seems to be running better, more efficiently, if you will. They
Yeah.
really seem like they've got everything together. And then the Seattle roster, I've already alluded to that more than once on this show. It feels like this Seattle roster has more answers in more places. And again, they're not a perfect roster. You can pick on them too, but it feels like they have more answers in more places. It kind of sort of feels like Drake May, who hasn't done it yet in the postseason, would probably need to come up with an MVP level kind of a game to
Yeah.
fuel this for a Patriots victory. That or a Sam Darnold turns into a pumpkin kind of a game where it's
Yeah.
two or three interceptions or
Yeah.
two, three turnovers, right? So, but Darnold hasn't shown that much this year. I mean, all through the playoffs, he's been fine. So, and again, it can still happen. Sam Darnold, I think, has been a starter in the NFL for what 6 years now, and in all six of those seasons, he has thrown for an average of 13 to 14 picks a year. He's fully capable of
Hmm.
throwing picks. And yet, the Seattle defense is so good.
Yeah.
And while the running game is inefficient, it still produces,
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's not like they have to have Darnold playing flawlessly in order to win this game. It kind of feels like to me the Patriots would need Drake May to probably play not flawlessly, but a really high level game to win. So give me Seattle. I don't think it's going to be low scoring. It might start off that way, but
No,
I
yeah, I
actually
don't
feel
think so
like some
either. Hmm.
points are going to get put up here, and I figure it's going to end up 31-27, something like that.
Yeah, I was thinking like 31-21, something in that realm.
Okay.
For Seattle. This was Super Bowl you predicted, isn't it? Didn't you have Seattle, New England when we did the
At the
prediction
start
with
of the
Josh?
playoffs, yes, yes.
Yeah,
Not the
yeah.
start of the season, but start of the playoffs, yes.
Shout out to you. Yeah, New England, the elite defenses, and this is elite defenses. This isn't the offense has sputtered on its own. They've played the
Right.
Chargers, the Texans, the Broncos in the playoffs, and they haven't put up um let's see, they put up 16, 28, and 10 points. And 21 of those 28 against Houston were the was the defense. It was a turnover touchdown sort of deal. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but those are also bad offenses. Seattle's a good offense. And yeah, the running game hasn't been effective throughout the course of the year, but it's got momentum right now. Seattle's run game has momentum. JSN has momentum. And even in the games, I think I had this stat in that playoff preview episode, even in the games where Darnold has like multiple turnovers, they actually still have a really high winning percentage in that just because they have the defense to make up for it. And, knock on wood, it's not always like the huge back-breaking turnover that like we necessarily think of with Darnold, like in his own
Right.
territory or like a walk-in easy pick six. That doesn't make sense, that stuff like that. So at the end, I don't think New England's offense is going to have enough answers. And, what we've seen from their offenses in the playoffs is a lot of Drake May creating with his legs. And I think Seattle's going to be well prepared for that, the way they fly around and rally tackle and the speed at which they just play with their defense. Um, and I think, the New England defense, I haven't tracked the stat over the last few weeks, but they don't get a ton of sacks on the quarterback. So if Darnold just has time to work through the progressions and make the offense kind of happen the way he
Yeah.
wants. Because listen, even against the Rams, like the pressure was good. They were getting after him and the offensive line was just holding up. And even when, he had to get it out quick, he was doing that and he was making reads and making plays. So I think I think Seattle is well positioned for this. And yeah, like 31-24 is kind of what I'm expecting. It's gonna maybe be Seattle jumping out in front with their defense a little bit, New England sputtering, and then it's going to be like kind of a back and forth game that I think Seattle will be fairly in control of. Um, Ben, like I said, this episode's coming out Tuesday. What do you have anything else on Pro Football Enterprises coming out after Tuesday to get ready for the Super Bowl that people should be looking for?
We're loaded. We don't have any breaks planned other than what just gets forced on us. So We've got the NFL draft picks continuing to come through, prospects. We've tried to streamline it, but we focus on one guy at a time, two to three different ones of us who have actually studied the tape. Okay, and we've tried to invest the time in this. Mostly wide receivers coming through over there, but there will be tight ends. There will be running backs coming through as well. We wanted to do offensive line. We just don't have time to do everything. So, I love offensive line, but the prospects will keep coming through. And then, of course, the Washington Commanders stuff. Me and Robertson Vire do weekly analysis on the Commanders, and we go really deep. I mean, we're not just out there, punching cows and pulling things out of the air. We are roster analyzing, coach analyzing, draft pick analyzing. We are going through every part of the free agent class, and I mean every single one of them. The highlights. I mean, so we're plowing through, even if it's not your team. If you're interested in some of the draft picks and the free agents at these, we're plowing through that pretty good during this offseason.
Oh, fantastic. Well, everybody check that out. Pro Football Enterprises. And there's a contribution freeway between Box Score Network and Pro Football Enterprises as well.
Yeah.
So some of those prospect breakdowns from Ben and his team are on Box Score Network as well. So you guys can check that out. Box Score Network YouTube. Ben and I will also have plenty of draft stuff happening there. Ben, the next time you are on, man, we're gonna start the everyone's favorite War Room series, where you guys will catch that over 4 episodes, 2 months between now and the draft. Ben will be on every other week to do that. Those will be broken down into smaller videos on Box Score Network YouTube, but you'll get the full episode here on the Simon and Friends podcast, breaking down two divisions. Yeah, two divisions a show. I think that sounds right. Something like that. Over 4 shows, getting you guys ready for the draft. And we'll end it and we'll end the draft preview with the annual. This will be the fifth, I think, over under preview that comes out the day of the draft. So we've got really fun draft stuff coming up for you right when the Super Bowl ends. This train is not going to slow down. Um, like I said, from a programming perspective, today's Tuesday when this episode comes out. Thursday, I believe, maybe Friday, but later this same week is when I'll have the annual way too early quarterback predictions with Ronan Summers, which when we started this 5 years ago, it was way too early to do it in January, February. And now everyone's doing quarterback prediction outcomes in like November, December. So like I don't know, Ron and I are gonna have to rebrand that, I think, or something. But shout out, Ron. That's gonna be a great show. We're gonna record that Monday the 2nd, and that'll come out later in the week. And then the week after the Super Bowl, an updated QB situation power rankings with Josh Limsan's coming out. So some awesome and some of my favorite shows that we do annually on the Simon and Friends podcast with those guys. But Ben, thank you for all your work, man. This is a great show as always. And we will talk to you soon, and we will talk to you all soon at home. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment. Um, and check out Box Score Network YouTube as well. Check out Pro Football Enterprises. If you're listening on audio, A1 Day One, we appreciate you. Make sure you check out those shows on YouTube, as well as Odds On Favorite is dropping episodes again on audio side. So make sure you check that out as well. So thank you all so much. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Have fun and be safe out there.